What's good, Mark Cordone, the Joy Revolution podcast. Look, if you haven't heard about me, I get to aid people as they lead joy revolutions. This is a commitment to social change using joy and creativity. I absolutely love it. Let's go right to our guest today, right? There's no time to waste here, right? This is our second recording because I completely butchered her name. But I want to go and mention right off the bat that she's doing a 3-day conversation challenge. We'll be talking about more about this challenge as well as her GPS system, solution-focused approach, which goes really well with positive psychology. So when it comes to the 3-day conversation challenge, at any point during this podcast, you can go here, Cher.com. Did I get it right, Cher?
Yes.
Amazing. So I also want to talk about this. This is a person who wears many, many hats. She's the host of the Focused Mind podcast, maybe a new podcast that she wants to share in a little bit, a school counselor, as well as where I met her, a TEDx speaker. We all know how fun TEDx Ocala is, right? So Cher Kretz, what are you doing on this show? What are you doing here?
I mean, we just met and had dinner together, and then it was
We
just
did.
like it had to happen, right? We just knew right away that this had to happen. So,
It had to happen.
to
Like
be
we were
honest,
in.
I was invited a year ago, right? But it just was we didn't make it happen like when I first did it. The year anniversary of my actual podcast. So this is a long time
Mhm.
coming. So, here we are.
Exactly. That's why we're
Good
here.
things
We met at
come
the
to those
dinner.
who wait, right?
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Let's get to this. Let's get to this. So childhood. You were like, was it like 8 kids growing up in your house,
It
right? From
feels like it.
childhood to like, it feels
Yeah.
like it.
No, it was, but it was like through my dad's side and my mom's side. So, there was 4 and then there was a divorce. So then there was 2 on one side and 1 on the other. So it added up to a whole heck of a lot of kids, but over a long span of time. So,
So it feels like a mix between the Brady Bunch and Modern Family.
right? I know, huh? It's like a lot of people, but it's super fun when we get together. It's a blast. So,
I'm sure, but also from that early age, right? Could you see certain things that you're practicing now, whether a school counselor or communication, that you were already picking up when you were growing up in that kind of family?
I'll say that it was interesting because I grew up in Seattle, Washington until I was in about 4th grade. And I do have a memory, I actually write about it in my solution focused hope journal that's on Amazon called 30 Days to Higher Hopes. And
Mm-hmm.
I talk about the concept of us being able to visualize a brighter future. And that is something that I actually inadvertently ran into when I was a kid because I would gaze out my window in Seattle and you could see the Puget Sound and you could see the Mount Rainier and it
Hmm.
was beautiful. But sometimes as Seattle does, rains and it rains and is cloudy and you couldn't see the Puget Sound. Or the mountain, and it gave me so much peace. And so I remember gazing out the window and just picturing the mountain there. And I would just picture every mountaintop and everything I could remember down to as many details as I could. And it just gave me so much peace. And I realized after I moved to California and my parents ended up getting a divorce that even in that practice of visualizing I took with me to say, there's always that you can take a feeling that you have and you can imagine that in and reimagine how you're going to feel about a situation. And even many times in California, when I longed to be back at home looking at that mountain, I'd visualize it and I could remember it. And I think that's actually a really cool, it's not exactly a skill that I talk a ton about on my podcast, although I think it's important in what I teach. It's important. That's why I put it in journaling, because I think that when we journal, it's real important that we visualize where we're headed and the place that we want to be as clear as possible as we're progressing.
You know what's really cool that you're bringing up is, from a neuroscience perspective, the brain doesn't know the difference between whether you're looking at a mountain or you're visualizing a mountain.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but like I'm just taken back for a second, like how much and how easy visualization was when I was a kid. Like,
Right.
just I could imagine it and it was very real to me. And then here I am at some point in my life, especially during my late 30s, I was paying people mad money to help me visualize
Isn't that
things.
weird? Yeah, it's weird how our natural born imagination begins to slip away from us.
Yeah, completely, completely. Now, I know that you do have, a mindset of doing this sort of practice when it comes to your GPS system. And before we get to it, I just wanted to throw out when you're talking about the visualization, both when you were a kid and what you're helping folks with now with their mindsets, it also feels like there's a tinge or maybe even a huge tinge of hope in there. And so I was just curious about visualization and hope and what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I think that as I became a counselor, the word hope is thrown around a lot, as far as like, oh, people want to be hopeful and things like this. But I came across some research that there's actually a ton of different studies on hope itself. That when there is a high level of hope in somebody, which means that they can see a vision for their future and they can see a pathway to get there. They can visualize a pathway to get there. If it's completely fogged out, like hope begins to fade and fade and fade. So I realized the importance of it because of all of the time that I've spent as a counselor and, probably my lifetime as well. I realized that when I was in my lowest point, what would I do? I would search forward towards the future and feel some
So
kind of what
good.
I call hope, that
So
hopeful
good. Yeah.
mindset, but also in solution focused therapy itself is the main, a big question they ask. And sometimes they have different ways now but they say, what is your best hope? And many people will be
Mhm.
like, what do you mean? What is my best hope? But honestly, I love that question. And I can, because it forces someone to kind of like make it a thing, not like a feeling, not like a woo woo, not like if they have a religious feeling wrapped around hope, they can let go of that and just say, what is your biggest hope? And when they think about that, then they're like, well, it's to be healthy. And then, well, what
Mhm.
would that look like if you were healthy? What would that look like if something amazing happened and you woke up one morning and your hope was a reality? What would that look like for you? And then they begin to paint this beautiful picture, and we find out that we can do a lot of those very things today. And that's how hope
Right.
regenerates, because when we realize that we can actually um, do the things that we would be doing in our future, if you will, and we feel that in our heart and we can conceptualize it, then hope abounds. So I love that.
And I love the way that you discuss that as well, because for many years I had issues with the way hope was being interpreted. I even remember myself defining hope as like this wish. And
Yeah.
like, I want to make this wish, and, someone will show up and fix everything for me. Until that day happens, I'll just be waiting.
Yeah.
And to me, that became, as a person who still is interested in like empowerment and stuff like that. That type of hope was the most disempowering thing ever when we're praying for something
I
to
know.
happen and for something to rescue us. And
Yeah.
have you heard of the work of Snyder and Lopez on hope theory?
Yeah,
Because there's
that's the research that I've been talking about.
oh me.
Yeah, I use Snyder's Hope Scale in basically all of my pre and posts with psychology, with all of my counseling and stuff. And actually, I did a version of his Hope Scale in my journal. And I give it credit, of course, but I kind of like worded it a little bit different. But because I believe in it so much that we can, we can find out our level of hope and put it in different terms. And if you're familiar with that research, then you know that there's a very firm difference between a wish and a hope. And many times people will come and be like, well, hoping is just ridiculous because then it keeps people in a bad marriage or things like that. And I'm like, no, wishing is that.
Mm,
What you're saying is wishing. If you're wishing things would get better, wishing on a star, like that is nothing that is scientifically based, and that can be very toxic and damaging. Hope is a much deeper rooted
yes,
something that resides within you, where you know that the brighter future is possible. And
completely.
what you hope in is extremely important. Since we're on this subject, I can't even imagine like the things that I've dealt in the negative way. Like, let's say I'm gonna a little negative. I mean, it's not really negative, but suicide. Okay, I'm a school
Mhm.
counselor. I've been a junior high, high school counselor. I've done probably hundreds, if not close to 1,000 suicide assessments over the 20 years. I mean, kids talk about it, then you have to do the full assessment. And many people will say things like, oh, well, just tell them that their life, aren't they lucky to have this? Aren't they lucky to have that? A
Ouch.
person that gets that place in their life, not counselors, obviously, but other people, their thought is, I just want to tell them, look at how blessed they are. The problem is not that they are feeling like they don't know that they have blessings or whatever. The problem with someone who has got to that mindset is that they've probably lost hope for a long, long time, became apathetic,
Mhm.
right? When we're apathetic, that means that we are not hoping or thinking, we're just living, right? And there's no hope. But sadly, that person that wants to commit suicide, they find hope in the darkest, saddest place. They find hope in ending it all. And that is how powerful hope is. And how amazing is that? It's like when someone has felt nothing, or they felt that nothing of depression, and even the hope of ending it all can spark something. You see these people that are close to suicide and they're like, they've been walking around happy all day long. They've been so joyous. They've been so in a great mood. And it's because the power of hope is powerful no matter what you hope in. And so it is
Wow.
so important that we take captive our thoughts and our mindset, so we place our hope in the place that lines up with our true values, our true beliefs of what we really hope for our future, and that we believe that that's possible. And so when we see someone in a depression and we think, are they suicidal? Not if they're just living like this, but they could get there if they think they can end it. So it's like having someone then just say one thing. Who cares what blessings they have? But if I say, if there was
Mhm.
one thing that you're looking forward to doing tomorrow, what would that be? One thing. And they say, well, I just really like hugging my sister. And I'm like, you can do that tomorrow. You can do that tomorrow if you don't do this. And then it just that one little step, it's not big things, it's little things that gives us hope. And
It's a little
then,
hope installation.
right, and
Yeah.
then people can say, you know what, if I can hope in that, then I'm going to put my hope in the next big thing and the next big thing, and they can grow a level of hope in their life that can change their life completely. So,
Yeah. That's super cool. And I have a feeling you've done that more than once with
yeah, yeah,
installing those things.
most
You know,
definitely.
well, number one is I want to thank you for saying suicidal so many times that I'm not going to get monetized from this. But number two, while we're here, just to like when we're thinking about hope from the standpoint of what Snyder and Lopez were talking about, they also put in things that you can do while hoping. You can increase your willpower, right?
Yes.
Or you can use your willpower. You can change your way power, right? And you can, it's like a GPS that way too.
Yeah.
Anytime a barrier comes up, and then you can do those what is it, mental contrasting with implementation intents, right? Where it's like if then, so if this goes wrong, then I'll do this. If
Yeah.
this goes wrong, then I'll do that. You're looking at me like you're a PhD saying, "Good work,
No, you're
student."
right on, dude. You're right on. I love it. Yeah. Because a lot of
This is why.
people, they truly don't know what I am meaning at all when I say will and way. I'll be like, well, we really need to focus on their will and their way and their ability to see pathways. And people will be like, what in the world are you talking about? And so I'm like, but if you once you know type thing, and then you're like,
Yeah,
no, they really do
completely.
need a will to move forward and a way to do it. These two things. So yeah.
Completely. Oftentimes when I'm talking to somebody about hope theory, it will be like, okay, if you're in a car, the gasoline is the will, and the
Yeah.
GPS is the way.
Right? That's
You run out
true.
of gasoline, you won't get there. If you only have like one pathway, one road, and it gets blocked off, you won't get there either. So it's good to
Yeah.
have both.
I love
And
that.
then, yeah, completely, homie. Okay. So with this said, I called you homie. This is
I'll
why
take
we
it.
this is why we wait for a
I'll
whole
take it.
year.
Yeah.
It took me a whole year to do my research for
Boy,
you.
yeah, extensive. It was
Yeah,
only for this podcast. That's the only reason you looked into.
totally. Only reason why.
That's how
Talk
deep
about
you
this.
go into your research, right? Like, folks. It's like
I put your TEDx talk on a loop for like a whole
you're
year.
like, "And
I know
now
about the
I need
first
to
day.
go deep into hope theory in order to until then, I'm not interviewing her."
I'm screwed if I ever go on your podcast because I've got nothing more to say. Let's talk about this GPS system and why the GPS system is so important. You talk about it. I'm sure you talk about it on your podcast. You talk about it on TEDx Ocala stage. I'll link the video here in the description. But like GPS system, where did it come from? What does it do, and why is it important?
Okay. Well, where did it come from? The first thing is, I really was studying solution focus for a long, long time. And solution focus does basically tell us that there's three basic steps to progressing. And I was kind of like thinking, well, in order for me to bridge from using a solution focused practice in my counseling to using it in my everyday life, I need a quick, easy way to remember to keep my mind solution focused. Now, solution focused doesn't mean that I'm coming up with solutions for people. It's the key of saying that believing that people have a solution to every single one of their problems, believing 100% that they have a God given ability within them to solve problems, and that the problem they're dealing with in that moment, they can solve. And they might need a little push and they might need a little pull forward, but it's not for me to solve. Because if I solve it for them and it's not authentic, there's a high chance that they will never follow through with it. They'll just go, wow, that was really
Totally,
smart. That was a really smart
totally.
thing they said, but it's not internalized. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel authentic. So, solution focused therapists learn all kinds of different ways to believe in their client and ask questions after questions to be able to uncover what they really have within them. And so
Mm.
I wanted to be able to do this more often in my everyday life because I realized the power of it. And I realized as well that I sabotage my own self by just getting in my head in conversations. And I think of the next thing I want to say and I want to, something I want to share. And it's a very selfish way of communicating, but I was stuck in it. And I thought, oh, well, of
Mm.
course I don't do that with counseling because in counseling, we listen. We're not even supposed to talk. And then I'm like, well, why don't I do that more in conversations? It was kind of like, ouch, I need to fix that. And so one day I was thinking, what could I really think of that could really help me? And I thought, well, I need to gather their thoughts. At the time, I thought of it like if I was gathering a bunch of apples off a tree or just whatever, I was gathering something really quickly and not judging anything, just gathering, gathering, gathering. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to think gather. And then I said plan, but plan is really important for hope, but it's not, it needs to be specifically for their preferred future. So there's a lot of P's in there actually that I didn't even talk about in the TED Talk, but their preferred future, not my future, right? So the
Yep.
planning phase, and that's a P, but for me, it actually goes for preferred future as well. And then the S simply just stands for start because people can get stuck in the planning phase. And what does that mean for a conversation? It means that we're the person that says, you should do that. Wow, that's amazing. I could completely picture you doing that. Have you looked it up? What have you done to take steps forward? So you're not only being somebody's listening and gathering their information, but you're also helping them with a plan that they can buy into. So when this all clicked in my
Yeah.
mind, I started practicing it and I'm like, I can remember this, because everything that we do it's like everything we do in our conversation, even right now, there's two things going on. There's us talking and then a dialogue in our head, now always because we're thinking, as a podcast host, there has to be a lot of things in our head because we have to think, okay, is everything recording right? Is there something, what am I going to ask next? Things like this. But this happens even in everyday conversation. And so what we think
So
about
much.
is just super duper important. So when I realized that it worked for me, I was like, this could work for a lot of people who are right in the middle of talking to someone stressed or upset, and they just want to help them. And it can help them shut their mouth and listen and shut their mouth and allow the other person to work through their issues. And I just thought it was beautiful. So when I started thinking about putting it on stage, I just knew it was something that I wanted to share.
Yeah, what's really cool about this? While you were talking and I was rehearsing this in my mind, wanting
Yeah,
to sound good, right?
I knew
Just
you were.
no, no, right? No, as I was listening to this, there's there's an incredible amount of empowerment in this model, where it's like, it's not me suggesting what they should do, it's affirming what they're already doing and just shutting up and listening to that, and it's incredibly powerful. I feel like things like game theory, if you were to apply that to somebody, that always starts with the person has the choice to opt in. If they don't, it doesn't feel like a game. Or like I think self-determination theory, there's like a choice in there. Why are you
Because not that many people talk about all this theory stuff. I'm so fun. It's so great.
Oh, you just thought I was a crazy Asian in
I'm
TEDx
like,
locale?
wow, we're just getting into all this stuff. It's so fun.
No, but like, how powerful is like sovereignty and autonomy in this day and age, and I love that it starts with, having the person select what lights them up and then having them, then empowering them to go in and celebrating with them when we've got some wins and stuff like that. With
Yeah.
you, was it instantaneous when when you came up with this model? Were you like, okay, this model makes sense on paper, but what does it mean to apply it? Or were you so well versed with it that it was easy to like just go into it and be very, very, mindful about applying that GPS system?
Yeah, I would say that I needed a lot of work, so I really need it. I was glad that I had the system because it helped me along the way faster. Like when I was just trying to be like, I need to be solution focused. I want to be solution focused in conversations. Like that recording going through my head while I'm trying to talk didn't work. I would just end up leaving the conversation, go, oh man, I did it again. I didn't really listen to their full, I didn't really get to the bottom of it. I didn't ask them questions. I should have asked them questions. I'm like, bummer, man. And so I thought, I have
Cher's
to,
getting frustrated by her
I'm like,
own.
because I really did. I challenged myself. Like that was my whole thing is I was like, for a while, probably for the year before I decided that this is what I would want to talk about on the stage, I was challenging myself to do this in the everyday life. And so the GPS didn't, it wasn't like it's still a challenge. Sometimes it's a challenge to this day, but it's the thing that I know that I can lean on that will put me back on track, because our mind's everywhere. And I could think, GPS. And sometimes it's when you get kind of much better at listening to people, you intuitively know that this person needs me to gather more information without judgment. We might not ever get to a planning phase or they just really need that right now, and that's where I'll end it. And that doesn't mean that when they're done, my turn to talk. Well, what you should do is da 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 da. But see, I gathered without judgment that blows it because then they don't get to resonate. They don't get to resonate with their own thoughts. The best thing you could do during that gathering phase is repeat back the last few words of what they had said, not as a question or anything, just as a statement. Like if someone was to say, yeah, I was just really pissed. And then you're like, you were pissed. And that
Hmm.
encourages them to move forward with that thought process and really get it all out and be there in that moment with them. But you're not just listening to just hear all the problems. With a solution focused ear, you're listening to find what's going well and the things that they don't
So good.
notice. So they don't notice they say it. So they'll be like throwaway statement. Yeah, my mom almost always drives me nuts. I swear, like maybe twice out of the whole time we've been going to school, we ever just laugh. And then if you're just listening without a solution focused ear, you'll be like, my gosh, your mom and you never get along. No, what you want to repeat is, so you got along twice? When was that? So you pulled out those 2 times, and then their mind goes, "Yeah, twice, but it never happens anyway anymore." Like, well, in that one time, do you remember what was different about that day? What was different about that morning when you were on your way to school? Well, we were, and then they begin to realize, oh, if this happened once, it can happen again. So it's not as if you're just listening, you're also listening for what's going well because everyone already knows what's going wrong and they want to wallow in the problem. Your job
Yeah.
is to
Yeah.
move them towards a solution in a kind way, in a seamless way. You're still doing something. It's not like you're just, I'm taking myself out of the equation. You're still doing something, but you're doing it in a different type of way than you would have done before. And so, yeah. And so that's where it leads with that is it's a different type of processing. So yeah, it helped me, but it really just kept me on track. It kept me focused, which I need. My
Got
mind
it.
could be everywhere.
Got it. So your mind can be everywhere. No, I'm just kidding. You
And
need
you're
to
gonna hear
read.
another 10, 15-minute monologue of
Yeah, completely. You know what I like about that is you're not throwing away the other 28, 29 days. You're focusing on what works first and then being like, can we make this 4 days next week or
Right,
next month? Can we make this five?
right.
Dare I say we make this 10 days, one third of the month, you know?
What
And I
happened
love how
if?
you,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now, have you have you had clients or students who've come in and there's no hope? Like what does that look like? Or maybe this is your mind like being able to identify things that not a lot of other people would identify. I'm guessing there'd be a line of questions where it's just like you keep asking questions so you get to that aha. We're gonna
I don't know. I
wrap
just
around
think that
this.
I think honestly that I just don't believe that they don't have hope. Like I do not. I 1,000,000,000% believe in every one of my clients that they do have hope hidden within them, absolutely positively. And
Mhm.
I just absolutely believe that. So I don't think I've ever sat in front of anybody when we see a circumstance and we assume that because of that circumstance they have no hope,
Mhm.
then we are robbing them of finding that glimmer of hope. And I feel like oftentimes people will say, well, the solution focus won't work in X situation, like if they're dealing with grief. And I'm like, well, yes, it will. I've used it in grief and it does work with grief. It works with these very
Mhm.
sad situations. And there's studies that some of these same people you're talking about did about people that were in life in prison. And you would think, oh, I'm talking to someone with no hope. But who are you to say they will find hope where they're at? In the
Mm.
space that they're in, they can find a will and a way to go for it towards a brighter future. So with that definition in mind, my question then changes to I wonder what hope they're going to find through our
Mm.
conversation. I'm so
I love it.
curious about what hope they're going to find through, and I'm hopeful myself that it's going to be through this conversation. If not, it will be soon. I believe that it will be. And then when there's this small thing, and then you're in tune with something when they say, I just couldn't believe when I saw my favorite something, my friend's dog came over and played. It's smallest little thing. And you'd be like, wow, you spent time with the dog and something lit them up. And then they move forward. It's like the smallest thing. You never know what a client or a student is going to say, where you're like, they're leaning in, they can lean into that. They can lean into that
Oh,
precious feeling, whatever that is. And then it can unlock the next hope and the next hope. And so there's some dark, sad situations that our kids are in. And if I got caught up in that, I would, when you're working with young kids, I've worked with all ages, but when I work with young kids, some of them are in situations they can't get out of. And, so then in that situation, since I've adopted the solution focused approach, I don't walk away from my job sad because I have conversations where I know that in that moment, there is a plan for their life and that they are going to find hope. I just believe it. So
mhm.
that's just how I look at it.
Yeah. Well, number one, I feel like I'm listening to Man's Search for Meaning Part Two. So if you haven't written that, like, absolutely, like, I love that. It's just we haven't turned the page enough to know what's going on, you know. And I know you're gonna write Man's Search for Meaning Part Two, but
Obviously, yeah, that's
right. And but also you've written 30 Days to Higher Hopes and Solution Focused Hope for Today. When it comes to some of these practical ways of bringing in the GPS system into all of our daily lives, what are some of the things that you talk about in those, in those books?
well, as far as if you want to use it for your personal growth, then it's a
Mhm.
journaling practice, right? I mean, I do
Mhm.
this many times. I'll write, gather, and then I'll gather all my own thoughts without judging my thoughts at all about whatever is on my mind in that moment. It might be a goal that I want to gather all my thoughts about, and then, oh, I want to do some research on this, and I'm going to write down this website that I'm going to visit, and this YouTube channel, and this person I need to talk to. Oh, wait a minute. As you gather without any judgment, your mind is open to like the pathways, and your mind begins to see all these different pathways. And then you remember, wait a minute, doesn't my cousin, doesn't her best friend do the same thing that I want to be doing? Maybe I should give them a call. So you're opening your mind to gathering. Or if you are, worried about something. So in a journaling practice, you would just write it all down, type it in your notes, whatever. And then you allow yourself to move to the peace. So that's what it helps you move forward. Now I need to plan. What are the action steps that I need to take? Will that work for me? How does it feel? How does it feel? How does it land with me? And you make a plan. And then you encourage yourself to start by writing out those action steps. I will, like affirmations. I will, da 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 da, by this time, da 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 da. And a journaling practice such as that, it becomes a very forward focused journaling practice. It becomes your future focused and you're hope centered. You're not wallowing in the past, but you're acknowledging it by gathering that information, and then you're moving forward. So that's a personal practice of why I wrote the journaling books. But in your own life, as far as conversations, then I feel like that's just amplifying it, where you, like I said, what are you thinking about when you're talking to people? It might not be that if you spend all your time just listening to someone plan, and you're saying, wow, what else would you might do? Well, what might you do next? Oh, that's an interesting thing. What would you do next? Well, think about just the gift that you're giving them. So I just really think the practical knowledge is to be able to remember these 3 steps for whatever you might come up with in life, where you can pull that out as a tool and use it to level yourself up.
Yeah. So I know that you have one daughter who plays volleyball, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I don't know how big your family is, if you have more, your husband, any of those
Yeah.
things. But with your family, have you had them like go through that book? And, is that working for them? Like, I mean, positive psychology works for the most part until I try to talk to my son about it.
You know what? I've realized that that's just totally normal. As far as if it's moms, mom, you're a school counselor, and I'm like, telling them these big amazing things that other people might be like writing down, and they're like rolling their eyes. So it's like I'm completely used to this. It's like, it's not that they're not proud of me. It's not that they don't even believe in it. But it's really funny because the way that I catch it is my oldest one is living with us at the moment. She's an adult, and she'll say, Mom, she's a teacher, and she'll be like, Mom, can you help me with this student? Something like the stuff that you always do. What would you say? And so she comes to, and I'm like, that's so cool because she acknowledges it. Or I'll hear my daughter, my teenage daughter, talking to her boyfriend or something, and she'll be living out she'll be living out that, and then she'll be like, Mom,
Right.
I just had to listen. He needed to get it out. And so I see the fruits of like,
Amazing.
yeah, it's like I feel like I'm in tune with the fruits of where it's landing in their life. And it's really cute, like even with my middle daughter, who's my really fun one. She's everywhere, right? She's landing at some point, but you never know where, type thing. And she recently read a self-help book that's I forget the book. I wish I remembered it because that would help the story a lot. But she was calling me and talking to me like, Mom, did you know this and that and the other? And then, of course, I do. But I'm like, really? Wow, that's so cool. So, it's like, and now I get to watch her discover what I've probably told her before, but she's reading it for herself now. So it's like totally
Was it
different.
Lopez and Schneider?
No, that would have been hilarious. No, but it was a great book. It was talking about, how trauma, I remember she was telling me about how trauma manifests in your life, and how, you even the smallest trauma could come up in this way and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. So it's really great. So it's really great. Just parenting is great, but you can't expect them to take your work and be like, I live by the thing that my mom wrote. No, like my mom wrote some book. It's out there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm at the point now where, my son came from me being the coolest thing to
Yeah.
like, Dad, come on, Dad, don't do that.
You're like,
Come
who
on,
am I?
Dad.
Yeah.
They don't just it needs to have Adidas on the front, Dad.
I'm
Like
telling
not just
you.
a white shirt.
Yeah. You
It's all
just,
good. I
we
love
turn,
the
we, all
boy.
of a sudden, we turn so ridiculous to them. We're like, okay.
Right? Well, and I wanted to bring this up too. In your field of school counseling, how much is currently directed at around the United States, solution focused and GPS, positive psychology? Because well, this is from my experience. I have seen a lot of school counselors on the verge of burnout, needing to see a counselor themselves, which is great.
Yeah.
And kind of going from the pathological standpoint of things, is has this been it's been since like 2015 that I was in an academic setting, and that's what it looked like then. But is this something that has been rising up? Is this the norm? Like, what's going on in this field of work? Hey, are you picking up what I'm throwing down here? Are you digging the Joy Revolution podcast? If so, I invite you to subscribe on this platform. Now, if you want more, I have an online community called The Underground. It's free to sign up. In there, you'll find mini courses inspired by podcasts like this one. You get to connect with other community members. I'm in there. The link's in the description. Let's get back to the episode.
I would say that there's a group, it's a growing group of counselors that are solution focused. There's the lady that I actually talked about in my TEDx, Dr. Linda Metcalf. She leads Solution Focused Schools Unlimited, and she's written 11 books, and she does free lives. It's just absolutely amazing. And all these counselors get on from all over the United States, and we're all so excited. But that's a small portion, but it's great. There's a lot of people out there that are understanding that there's a different way to be a counselor, and because it is very draining to solve problems all day. Really, what people think our job is, and many counselors graduate with a wide variety of stuff they've studied, but they don't really say, hey, your job isn't necessarily to fix problems all day. It's to help people solve their problems. They don't tell you that in school. So there's a lot of counselors that are finding that out. I spoke at 3 counseling conferences last year, all packed out. And every one of those, most of them joined my email list. Many of them email me and ask me questions because we gravitate towards each other, right?
Yeah.
Field. So it's exciting and great to be around counselors that are learning more about how you can empower others rather than fixing a problem. Now, for high school counselors, there is a lot of sometimes the job itself is mostly schedule changing and getting people ready for college, which I enjoyed when I was a high school counselor. But I think that's why you see some of the even high school counselors, they're like very driven on making sure they get the right classes and get to college. So sometimes they're not as locked into the social psychology part, unfortunately.
Right.
But for the most part, when I'm around counselors, we're there because we want to help people. And many
Completely.
times, just like teachers, with teacher burnout, it's not because they don't have a heart for it. It's because they've been through it, and maybe they don't have the resources, and they feel drained, and they feel like there's so much pressure on them to get things done that it drags them down. And my heart goes out to them. And that's why a lot of the places I talk are to counselors, because I do want to say,
Completely.
there's is a way to be light on your feet after leaving when you heard a lot of really bad news. If there's any bad news in the school, the school counselor has heard it. And no one else in the school knows. They're just oblivious walking around. And I'm saying, I'm walking around and I'm like, that kid's homeless. That kid's mom died yesterday. That kid's parents just divorced. Nobody knows that. They're just walking around smiling. So when you have a tool that you can say, I'm instilling hope in every one of these situations, tragic or not, yeah, I'm all about sharing it with as many counselors as I can because I think it's a game changer. So,
Completely. And there's actually, this is my thought about it. There's space for counselors on every single level, from languishing to flourishing. And I believe it was the WHO organization that put out something about mental health, and it said like, yes, going from languishing to beginning state, or a neutral state, is fine, but the absence of mental languishing does not mean the presence of mental flourishing. And I actually see hope going through the whole thing, right? There's the
right.
languishing, there's the pathology. Give hope, 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 hope. Okay, now we've got you to a point where we don't see it as a pathology, but how can we get you here in this neutral state and use hope, 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 hope for the flourishing? So, like, as you're talking about all those things, some being very hard to hear on a regular basis, but still there's this movement towards
Yeah.
um in absence of, in absence to the presence of mental flourishing. And I mean, it's really cool to think about.
And I think in general, there has been so much research lately, um, and I think that people are um, more apt to understand how I don't even like to say positive psychology, but like, like that type of thing actually is very much rooted in in the scientific realm of how our mind works. Our mind needs to fix on something sometimes, and it's up to us what we fix it on. Like what you talked about in your TED talk, it's up to us to really take that captive and really understand that it's important because that's what our mind needs. If we just let it wander around and to whatever it wants, that it's going to find the crap in the world. So, I think that I think there's for people who are forward thinkers and want to be that, then we're all kind of joining together, meeting of the minds to help more and more people. So,
Completely. And I think that's what you're doing, like not only with your day job, the whole passion to like empower people to have these conversations, to move as a society to this next place, possibly to be a part of the movement where do you think we're going to do it like where there's no stigma around mental health?
I
You're
know.
going through a boo-boo,
I
right?
know. That was one of my first rants when I didn't have a podcast. I didn't have nothing. I didn't have a channel. I just decided on my good old Facebook, I just do a rant about how, you know, that we needed to get rid of the stigma. The stigma needs to go away, and it is enough kind of thing. And then all these counselors and even my boss liked it and shared it, and other people shared it, and it was like, yes, we need to do that. And it was before 2020 when everyone needed
Yeah.
a huge something. So it was like,
Yeah.
it's just it's exciting to talk to another like-minded person. I'm really glad that you brought me on here because even just if we weren't recording, I would so enjoy this conversation. So I'm really
Right?
stoked about that.
You thought I was a goofball like I was with
No.
your client, Tiffany.
No, I didn't. You guys were having so much fun. You guys should all go
Oh
back and
my
watch
God.
that
And I hope you're
episode.
having fun too.
Yes, that's what it's all about. That's right. I love
Hey,
that.
Tiffany, good to see you.
Right.
So there, and let me go here because I can't move away from it. Where do we start when it comes to getting rid of the stigma? It just looks so
Jeez.
huge,
It is
you know?
huge. I mean, I almost think that it's like we have to take the approach of like realizing that some people are going to have that stigma, so it doesn't bother us
Mhm,
anymore. Like
mhm.
I've come to know where like I'm going to do everything I can to break that stigma. In my school, I make it they're winning a prize if they get to see me. Like it is the best day of their life. Like I'm like, guess what? It's your turn. You get to talk to me today. And they're like, and then I tell the parent, I'm like, I am so excited because I've been meaning to get into that your child's class, and I would absolutely love to help them with these social situation. I mean, I bet you're really tired of having that impact their learning, and I would love to help you. And I just like make it such a great thing that they're coming to get help. And it actually worked. I mean, I would tell you the last school I was at, they moved me to a school I love, but the school I was at, I also missed so greatly. It was like I think I overdid it because it was like I was a superstar at school. It was
Did you
ridiculous.
did you have a
Like,
line?
think I overdid it. Like it was like, oh, there's Mrs. Kretz. And they would be like knocking on my door, leaving notes. And I'm like, because I was just so intent on getting rid of that stigma. And every school that I'm at, I find that just by me changing my attitude and my mindset towards it, it helps a lot. I mean, if I go in and go, you know, I know this might be hard to talk about, but you just really might need to get some help for that. And, we're tiptoeing around their feelings that they might have about the stigma. But if you just kind of be like, there's no stigma here, then they'll be like, you think they
Yeah.
really need counseling? And I'll be like, it would be great if they had the opportunity to have counseling. You know what I mean? And just begin to
Yeah, I
switch
mean,
it,
that's such a
you
it's
know,
such a good way to approach those things, like, folks are the chosen ones or,
right? But at the
I'm
same
thinking
point, like it's okay. If someone comes to me and they have a
completely,
stigma, I'm just like, I
completely.
understand. You are
Yeah.
welcome to have that. And I get it and I understand it. And that is well more disarming than engaging in a conversation as to why they should take this stuff more seriously, So,
And I bet how many times have you gone through something where someone was like, oh, I thought you'd think I was broken or something was wrong with me. And I'm sure you've gone through that
For
with
sure,
your
for sure.
students,
Oh
where
yeah, they're like, nothing's wrong, things like that. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
That's super cool. And I also love like it through this conversation, some of those hard moments in life, they're allowed to work through that with you. You know,
Hmm.
I know that it was it you and your mother, or just your mother was in a huge car accident,
Yeah,
right?
it was
And
awful.
the amount of resilience that you needed to have in order to push through that moment, right?
Yeah, that was one of those defining moments of my life because it was really right before it was in 2019 on Mother's Day. And my mom has 5 kids of her own, and she was sitting at the beach after we had all spent our time with her at different times. And she was watching the sunset at the beach. And this car rolls around the corner, a drunk driver at 100 miles an hour, and just slams her in the back. She was parked, and she hadn't even got a chance to put her seatbelt on yet. So the car rolls over the side of the cliff of that, it's like overlooking the beach. So it falls down. And none of us knew this because it happened at night. None of us knew that she was in this accident till 5 in the morning. So at 5 in the morning, someone finally found information. She was a Jane Doe. They didn't know who she was. They had been doing blood transfusions. They helicopter flew her over to the emergency, and she was fighting for her life, but we didn't know till the morning. And then all 5 of her brothers and sisters, we all are close enough to where we all just drove from where we live to where she was at in LA. And, in those type of moments in our life, I mean, she had broken so many bones, and there was such a long time. Praise God that she was able to, for the most part, heal, and over a long period of time. She's not 100%, as much 100% as someone can be after something like that. But it does, a moment like that, when you're watching your mother in such a hopeless, helpless, terrible, it feels awful. It feels like nothing. It feels like, what the heck is going on here? But then you look around at all of her kids, and we were all just different personalities coming together to be there for her. And as much as that moment was awful, it was such an amazing time that we all came together for one common good and to help her. And we all we all did our part to help her. And I think that all of us are closer because of it, really, as adults. It was an adult situation. We were all adults with our families by that time. And so I think it goes back to sort of what we talked about. Like, in dark moments, there are amazing things happening, even in these
Exactly.
times, And I
Exactly.
think that the resilience it took for us to all get through that, no matter where we were all in our life, it just really shows that there's a lot of power in people coming together and pressing through to do what's right, even in the midst of things that are going wrong, and it was hard watching her go through that. It was horrible.
Oh, completely,
It was
completely.
awful.
And when I heard about this, it was a g- um a case study for what it would be like to apply these principles in real life. You can be hurting and sad, yet still have that approach, you know?
Yeah.
And it's such a clear example, even as you're saying it right now, it's very grave, it's very traumatic to listen to. And also I'm getting goosebumps in terms of the way that you're talking about it brought the family together to new levels.
Yeah.
Without that kind of approach, what would it have been? Maybe just you being incredibly pissed off at why why is the world like this? Why does it pick on good people? Why do drunk people do this stupid shit, you know?
Yeah. But
But here I'm listening to us.
I also found it very strange and interesting because it's a very surreal moment when someone is, close to death in a situation. And I was watching all these different personalities of my brothers and sisters and the other people coming in and out. And I was noticing the energy, and how, if a person was very anxious, the whole energy of the room would change. Or if
Mhm.
one of my brothers and sisters are more calm, the calming energy would take over the entire room. And um, and actually, at that time, that the first work that I did when I opened my podcast was I did something called share your vibe. And I thought, you take your vibe with you wherever you go. And that's the first thing I taught before I got into hope theory and all of that, was that in any situation, you're taking an energy into that place, rather than being affected by the energy around you. Be the energy
So
in
good.
that room. And that was actually a huge lesson I learned from that time, was just noticing, because that's all I was in, a very place of like, I don't feel like there's anything more I could do. But I was driving home from one of her hospital after she took her first step, and I was driving home, and that kind of came to me, where I was like, I want to help people understand that the energy they bring into a place is absolutely so, so important. It's so important. It absolutely could change everything about the direction of, not only a conversation, but really just how everything is in that whole space.
Dude, dude, twice already. That is so cool. As it just brought up this memory that I completely forgot about. Maybe if I go on your podcast at one point, I'll talk about how
You're
in the
going
roller derby
to.
world,
Yeah, get
right?
ready.
I talked about how at one point I was known as Manila Ice roller derby player,
Yeah.
broke my elbow, right, and grotesquely broke it. And I came
Terrible.
in and they gave me the percentages. They told me how long it would take, an enormous amount of time, and there was acceleration in the healing to the point where they're like, this is
Wow.
freakish, and I'm not trying to say like this is why I'm so amazing, right? But I talked to them because they also
Yeah.
lectured at Georgia Tech, and I talked to them about like, you're saying this is freakish. Like, how's this different from the textbook? And he straight up said, every time you come here, you're smiling. We're happy to see you. You're doing the work. And if you look around, some of these people don't want to be here. They're
Right.
in pain. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. And we go and put out the healing plan to what we usually see. But it's not normal that a person would come in with this bad of an injury and just be laughing through it. And I also wanted to bring this up as well. What you're talking about being the energy. I know that you're probably aware of this, but for the folks listening, emotional contagion is becoming a huge deal right now. And it's becoming a major in a lot of colleges where folks will say, look, if you go into a community with low energy or a community that's depressed, you're more likely to be depressed. If you go to a community that's flourishing, you have better chances of being flourishing. And when you make those decisions, you too should be part of that energy. You should be about that flourishing. And so lots of head nods I'm seeing here, Cher. Obviously, you probably know more than I do, but I know this is a growing field right now. And a lot of people are beginning to spend a lot of money and time on it. So yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge for you, I mean, that's the mindset, right? That's that you were able to focus on something that was your healing rather than focus on the problem. And I think that that is that amazing ability for you to do that. Then the doctors then notice that, like, look at how much it was able to push forward your trajectory. I think that's beautiful. Wanted
Yeah.
to acknowledge
And I'm
that.
sure you see that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see that too with kids with a certain mindset will come in. And if it's a mindset like focused on the solution, they are more likely to hit the solution and maybe even faster than
Well, I mean,
most.
and that's why I love solution focused, to be honest. If you just are talking pure counseling, is because it's the quickest way that I have found to get them to that place. It's the very quickest way that I have found because I say GPS because it's easy for me, but it's basically a formula, like I had said, of listening to them so intently and finding the exception to their narrative that is feeling very hopeless. And then looking for a time when that time has happened, discovering all the different ways that that happened and that it could happen or possibly might happen. And then using something like the miracle question is something commonly used in solution focused, where you'll say some version of, if a miracle occurred and you woke up and this was done, what would you notice? And what else would you notice? And who would notice? And then the power happens when I said, what would you be in that? And they're able to finally make a list of the type of person they would be. I would be kind, loving, caring. I'd wake up happy. I'd get up and get my shoes on. I would know that I have friends. And then I'll say, this is the real you, isn't it? This is the real you that people don't
Oh,
always see. And they just are like, that is the real me. And I'll be like, if you just sprinkle a little bit of this in your everyday, I wonder what would happen. How would people treat you differently? What would happen? And they begin to think, I can do that. I don't have to be grumpy every day. I don't have to give my teacher an attitude every single day because I hate math and all this. And it's like, that's why I love solution focused, is because they are able to change their mindset quickest than any other. And I've tried them all, because when I went through, I say in my TED, I mean, I literally was like, I'm going to find a way to help counselors change the trajectory, and no one's going to say that they don't make a difference in my
yeah.
clock, right? So it was important to me. So I tried a lot, and a solution focused method helps people come out of that problem focused mindset and focus on some level of a solution that they can grasp, that's theirs, and game over. Like the next time they come see me, their mindset's different, like
Mm.
done. So it's why I do it, is for that very reason of what you said. It's because of how important our mindset is. So important.
Completely.
Yeah.
And my producer Manny is wanting to come in and play a game, but I have
Oh,
one more question for you before he steps in. And that question is, whether 1 year, 3 years, 4 years, with a former student coming back, what have been like the coolest things that you've heard just personally? When someone does come back to the school or emails you or something like that, what does that look like?
oh gosh, that's I've had lots of interactions like that. It's a weird thing that you would ask me that, because I do revisit that. I think about that often. The kids that come back, I had such a cool thing. I've only talked about this a few times, but right after I did my TEDx, one of my past students reached out to me, and we follow each other on Instagram. And he was a high school student of mine back when I was a high school teacher. And he says, I watched your entire TED. He said, and let me tell you something. I never listen to things unless it's Ted Rogan, or whatever that Rogan show. I don't
Joe
even
Rogan.
Jim Rogan. I don't even know, because I don't listen to him. He's all, I never listen to anyone unless it's Jim Rogan. I'm like, well, then I guess then thank you, thank you. I don't know what to tell you. But he then went on to tell me, he said, as I listened to you talk, I remember the hope centered stuff that you told me. It changed the way that I looked at what I was doing, and I felt like I could graduate. I felt like I could do it. And I know this moment, just as he was texting me, I could see his high school self. And this is a man who now he went through the I don't know which military, but one of them. And he's very successful with 3 kids, wife, beautiful home.
Wow.
But I saw the high school him, and that kid was a kid that was on my non-grad list. He was not going to graduate. I guarantee you, he was not going to graduate if no one would have talked to him. He just didn't, he was failing. He was running around doing whatever he wanted and failing out of school. And I brought him into my office and I said, you could graduate. This is all the classes you've already done. Look at all the grades you've already passed. All you need is these 2, and that's it. And rather than him being focused on the fact that I've already failed, look at all the D's I have and look at all the F's, I said, you do these few things, you could graduate.
Goosebumps.
And in that texting that he told me, tears began rolling down my face, because he said what I thought. He said, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have graduated. And then he said, I was the first person on my father and mother's side to ever graduate from high school. Yeah. And his brother behind him was a freshman, and he graduated from high school too. And I told him, I said, your brother's watching you, man. And he graduated from high school, and it's just unbelievable how that changed his life, and unbelievable that I had the opportunity, because of a TEDx talk, for him to circle back and tell me that those conversations that I had with him changed his life. He said, you made it seem so doable, like I could graduate. And he said, to be honest, no one in my life was telling me that. He said, no one was telling me that I could do anything. In fact, my father was telling me I was probably going to fail. And he said, I probably would have. And it was just an amazing moment. I don't know how many people I've talked to that is the scenario, because people don't usually circle back and thank, the people. But that was a moment. That was definitely a moment.
Yeah. So suck on that, all
Right.
Cher's daughters. Listen to your mama.
Yeah. Oh, they listen. They just, in their own
I'm
little way.
joking.
In their own little way.
I'm joking. I'm joking. Okay, Manny, my producer, is pushing me aside and wants to play a game with you.
If I
He's
must.
saying solution focus this, solution focus that. Let's see how she does with my game. My game. He wants to play
Now
a
I'm
game
scared.
with you.
I don't really do well with games.
Well, you know what's even more scary is no one's passed this game except Scott, Mr. Our local potato man.
Lovely.
Tiffany passed. Annie passed. So like some of the TEDx Ocala passed, but
All
like
right.
do not let your group down.
I don't know what to
Because
tell you,
I'm gonna
man.
have to pep talk you. Are you into play?
I'm willing, but games are usually not my thing, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay,
We're going to give it our shot.
let's see how you do. I have full confidence in you. Manny does not. So Manny wants to play a game with you about how you embody joy. And so what he's going to do is he's going to read out a prompt, and you will go and finish the prompt either by one word, or if you want to have like a whole soliloquy that you
Whoa.
can take from that. There's no right or wrong way to do this, except Manny will judge you on it. So
Dang.
let's go. I got your back, Cher.
All right.
All right. So here's the first question
Pressure is
for
real.
you when it comes to joy, right? Joy tastes like,
Oranges.
all right, you
If
probably
he
can't
doesn't like
you
oranges, then we're in
you
trouble.
can't tell, but I have a multi-million-dollar studio, and his glass mixing board is back there. So I'm looking at him. He's got a picnic basket.
Wow.
Manny's lifting the picnic basket and opening.
What if he picks a
Cher,
bad orange? Oh no, I'm out of luck. One of those
Cher,
sweet,
you're
the really
not out of
sweet
luck.
ones. It's the sweet ones.
He's biting into the orange. He didn't even peel it. He's just biting right into it.
It's just how it
It's nice and
smells and
sweet.
everything.
Yes, absolutely. 1 point. He loves the taste of an orange.
Okay.
Congratulations. Where did you go here? Okay. I lost you for a second.
All
Oh, there
right.
you are. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. 1 out of 5.
Okay.
Congratulations. You got 1 point.
I know. I'm so excited.
This is further than, you're further along than
Than
Scott
some.
and Annie and Tiffany was
Okay.
at this point, right?
Okay.
Okay. Number 2. Joy smells like,
What if I say an orange again? It's an orange. Guys, look at,
oh my
I just
gosh.
said it smells so amazing. Your entire senses, a citrus. It's just like
He is
my favorite smell in the whole world is orange blossoms. I am in love with orange blossoms. So how can I not say that joy is orange?
He still has the picnic basket with him.
Take a big whiff. You'll
He
know.
opens the
You'll
picnic
feel
basket,
joy.
and a rainbow comes out of the picnic basket.
It's unbelievable.
It's got orange blossoms all over
It's
it, and there's oranges
unbelievable.
all around him.
See,
He's wafting it, and a single tear comes out
it's
of his
crazy. Now we just know. We know that this is 2 points. 2 points for Cher.
Joy does smell like oranges, according to Manny. Okay, you're not cheating on this game. He wanted to ask. You're not cheating, are you? All right, next question. Joy looks like,
Sunshine.
it's a double-sided picnic basket, and he's reversing it, and he's opening it,
Just open a little crack in a window somewhere.
and
Yeah, it's dark.
sunshine. Yeah, he also has a ceiling that
Yeah.
retracts, and
Yeah.
like sunshine is
There's
coming
so
down
much
upon
joy.
him.
It's exploding in there with joy.
His hands are up in the air. Man, have you ever seen something like this, Manny? He says no.
I know.
With sunshine and oranges. 3 for 3, homie. Oh my gosh, you might be scot-free here.
I might be.
Next
Well,
question. Wow. What answers here? Joy sounds like,
sounds like I'm for that one. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna get all natured out and be like water in a brook, like a very light when you're just like flowing down and trickling down. I live in a city, so I can't really explain this well. But when I am up in the mountains, a little
no,
waterfall of trickling water.
he gets it. What is interesting here is that he's opening his door out to his car, right? And there is
It's
a
nature.
bubbly brook
All right.
with
See?
rocks and water, little tiny waterfalls, and he's looking at it. He's smelling his
It's
orange.
gentle. Right.
It's gentle. It's peaceful. -1,000. He hates that answer. He
Well,
hates water.
all right. Well,
He's
you can't
allergic
win
to
them all.
water, he said. You
Allergic.
can't win them all.
Allergic.
It
Let's
doesn't.
go back to the oranges. Let's focus on that.
Let's go. Okay. Going into the last
How
question,
is it
you are.
1,000 minus 1,000? That
You're
seems a little
hey,
ridiculous.
like I told you, he's crazy.
I know it
He's
seems
crazy.
a little out there, right there.
What would you work on him with your
I
centered approach?
I like that. Seems a bit problem focused right there because
Problem focused
like
approach.
one answer is 1,000 points.
That's what I'm gonna do from here on if he ever wants to play the game. Like I said, I'm not the one rating this. Going into the last question, you are negative 997
Wow,
points.
it's bad, but
I
I warned
told you.
you.
I, t- I
I
told you.
warned you I wasn't good at games. You shouldn't be surprised.
Okay, let's just get this one done. We'll go, we'll do what we need to do
All
after
right,
this.
all right.
Almost a throwaway here. Joy feels
Like ultimate peace and happiness and hope.
Manny's got his arm crossed like this, and he's got aviator glasses on.
That's a
I
lot.
don't know why.
That's a lot. I think maybe he's not down for oh, okay. It's a good thing though. It's good. Yeah.
I don't know I'm just telling you what I'm seeing right now.
Okay. Okay.
And that tear's going into his really thick mustache.
Wow. See, I had to wait.
It's
I got to
going,
him.
yes, his arms are uncrossing. He's weeping in joy.
Right? Because the oranges too are helping with this whole thing. It's like the whole package.
The whole package. 998 points, my friend.
Wow.
10x
Wow.
Ocala for the win. You're
Dang.
keeping the streak alive.
Okay. Thank goodness.
1
That was a
point.
close call. That was a super close call.
It was.
I was
That one
nervous for a minute there.
Me too. The suspense. Okay, Cher, I think like all of what I do is it's encompassed in this idea of a joy revolution, right?
Yes.
Where number one, a joy revolution can be that internal joy revolution, kind of like what you're talking about with your student who connected with you and he's flourishing, right? It's that overflowing of the heart. You just feel it. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain,
Yeah.
but when you know, right?
Yeah.
But also externally, a joy revolution is where you use positive emotions to create social change, using creativity to bring people together. When I ask you, what is your joy revolution? How do you answer? So, Cher, what is your joy revolution?
I think the positivity of what I had talked about, I'm hoping to start a new podcast called Red Circle Mindset. And I feel like the people that go out of their way to do something as amazing as try to prepare and do a TED Talk, it's the most joyful, positive, focused, community centered celebration of good that I've been around in a long, long time. And I'm very joyful and excited to take on this new venture that I'm going to be doing in 2025 because I feel as though that encompasses that joy revolution mindset,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm willing to take a stand behind how I can help you on that. So there's no scoring of that. That's just awesome. I wanted to let anyone who's listening to know, again, we're having the 3-day conversation challenge.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that anyone who's listening to this can pull from this to help with that challenge.
It's really
You're going to
cool.
want to go to
Yeah. What happened was, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I wanted to talk
go
about
ahead.
it for a minute. It was super cool because after I did my TEDx, I had a group of people that were like, do you do any teaching on this? And I thought, I'm going to take a month. It was in between the time when it wasn't out there yet. And I'm going to write an easy way for people to put these things in practice. So you've asked me that lots of times. How am I going to put this in practice? Because it does take a little bit of a shift in the way that you're thinking. So I wanted it to be something that was accessible, didn't cost anything. So I took a larger course that I was developing and made it into 3 mini courses that are just simple and digestible. And then I put them into what I call the 3-day conversation navigation challenge, where every 3 days, as soon as they sign up, day 1, day 2, day 3, 3 days in a row, they're going to get, first, we're going to talk about the planning phase. Then we're going to talk about the starting. Then first we're going to talk about the gather, then the planning, and then the start. All 3 of those days we dive in, and then you get an action step to practice. And
so good.
There's been near 1,000 people throughout this last year that have jumped into that challenge. And then I'm able to have personal connections with them and they can email me and it's beautiful. And so I put it right there on my website, cherkretz.com or thefocusedmindset.com. Both of them go straight there. And there's a button on the front page that you can jump into that challenge. And then, like we mentioned at the beginning, I think that I'm going to do a super duper celebration for the year anniversary where I'm going to go live on YouTube, and everyone will get, who's in the challenge, will get an email about that, and they'll be able to join me and be in my audience. I'd love to have some of your audience members join me. That would be so cool. And I hope you're available. That'd be so fun.
I am planning to go to it, number one. Manny is saying no.
That's okay. I don't know. You know what? He doesn't like water. So I'm really having trouble with his whole vibe right now.
Manny, you're just a bad person.
I'm not really sure how I'm feeling about him
I'm going to
either.
see if I can drag Manny over there.
Yeah,
So
okay.
if any
All
listeners go over there, maybe we're going to have Manny in the audience in that live stream.
So that'll be super fun. So yeah, people should sign up. Whether they can show up at all in the live stream, there will be a redo. You know, people can watch the replay. But really, it's all just for us to be able to level up our conversation skills, you know? And so I hope people jump in there. That would be incredible. And even if they don't, you know what? Like, check my website out. Let's keep in touch. That's what this is all about, right? You know, we all join together and keep moving forward for the greater good of what we're working towards.
Completely.
Joy Revolution.
It's all at Cher, right? It's all at cherkretz.com, CHERKRETZ.com. Yes?
You got it.
This, I don't know about you, but this year wait was worth waiting a year for.
Yeah.
This was absolutely fantastic. And on behalf of Cher and I, start your revolution. Start it in love, in light, in shadow, and in joy, babies. See ya! All right, this wraps up another episode of the Joy Revolution podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And since you made it this far, go ahead and hit subscribe. Now, if you want to hear more podcasts, or if you're ready to engage with a community who will support and challenge you, if you're ready to start your own Joy Revolution, head on over to my online community, The Underground. The link is in the description. It's free to sign up. I've got a bunch of resources in there, including my own Joy Revolution course. So until next time, I'm Mark Cordone Creative. Dig deep, and I'll see you in the underground.